Hey there, friends. In the Old Covenant, the high priest was the one appointed to go into the presence of God, to represent the people to God, and to seek forgiveness for the people through presenting a sacrifice that would ultimately have to be offered again and again. Hebrews chapter 4 tells us that Jesus is now our high priest, the one who represents us to God to obtain our forgiveness and right standing with God, but now through his own life given as a sacrifice, one that would no longer need to be repeated or recurring. Look at Hebrews verse 14 and 15, which say, "So then, since we have a great high priest who has entered into heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to what we believe." This high priest of ours understands our weaknesses, for he faced all the same testings we do, yet he did not sin. He understands our weaknesses. Other translations say he empathizes. He sympathizes with our weaknesses. In other words, when we trip up, when we mess up, he is not a harsh, heavy-handed God. And as we read on in verse 16, we receive an encouraging invitation when it says, "Let us therefore." In other words, in light of the fact that Jesus experienced and understands and empathizes with us in our moment of weakness, and in light of the fact that he is now the high priest representing us to God, interceding for us, offering himself for us, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in a time of need. Several things I hope you catch or see more clearly from this passage. One, God's throne is described as a throne of grace. No doubt it is also a throne of power, splendor, might, and awe. But God desires for it to be known as a throne of grace. And at his throne we find mercy and grace. Two things that we do not deserve but desperately need. I've heard it said this way: because of God's mercy towards me, I do not receive what I actually deserve. And because of God's grace towards me, I do receive what I could never deserve: God's presence, God's promises towards me. Lastly, it says we can come boldly to this throne of grace, not sheepishly, not timidly, and not only on our good days. We can come boldly in our time of need. The New Living Translation says it this way: we can come boldly to receive mercy and obtain grace to help us when we need it most. When we need it most, in our darkest hour, on our hardest day, in the moment of weakness, that's when we can come boldly to receive mercy, to find grace, because the God we know, the God we serve, his throne is a throne of grace, and Jesus is a high priest who understands our weaknesses. What a good and gracious and merciful God. Today and every day, even in the hard days, the days you need it most, be encouraged. Boldly run to God to receive his mercy and experience his amazing grace.